Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's really good to see all of you. Thank you for joining. Very, very excited to have you on again for which is now the third discussion already in this series, and we're only nearing January 19th. So very, very cool. Let's move on to today's topic. So as I think we mentioned at our intro call earlier in January, we now split the program off into many different subsections because many of you are interested in a variety of things. And I think it would be really fun if working groups formed. So we have still continued the technical seminars. We already had one of these that was great. We are also doing investor Q&As. We had the first one with Carl Pfleger that also I think was really valuable. Learned a ton. And now we have the third part of this, which is our policy focus session. Many of you, when this group started virtually, that was a very, very big focus in this group. We talked a lot about this. And so I'm really happy that we're getting back to making this a major part of discussion for those of you who are interested, which are quite a few. All right, so I'm really, really happy to introduce you to Dylan Livingston. And Dylan is the founder and president of the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives, which is really the first 501c4 nonprofit organization that's focused on advocating for government-sponsored initiatives and policies to increase healthy human lifespans in the US. So really, really excited to have you on board. Thanks a lot. And I remember when you presented a while back and we're brainstorming with the group, and I am so thrilled to see where you've gotten this wonderful project so far. Sonia, who sponsored this group, is now also chairing, I think, many of your efforts. So it's really, really lovely to see. And I think you're off to a really great project. I would recommend you guys also join perhaps the mailing list, because I think you also have a few really fantastic discussions always coming up. So thanks for joining, and I will hand you over for the rest of the introductions. I'll be in the chat in case people have questions, and I will share a few links about you. So welcome, Dylan. It's very nice to have you back here.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Allison. I'm always happy to speak at the Foresight Institute. This place is the best with the best people. So I'm really excited to be here. And, thank you everybody in the audience for attending this discussion event. Like Allison said, my name is Dylan Livingston. I'm the founder and president of the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives, the first and only 501c4 organization politically advocating for the longevity community and industry. Today, I thought it would be a good idea to start off this series by bringing on A4LI's friend and lobbyist, Adam Bramwell, who's with us now. I'm going to ask Adam a few questions and have him discuss the prospects of making longevity a top-of-the-mind issue for politicians. And then, toward the end of the event, we'll open it up to Q&A and comments. I'm going to let Adam introduce himself more thoroughly in just a moment, but here's the headline version. Adam is the head of government relations at Cohen and Gresser, one of the top lobbying groups in DC. Before that, he worked in high levels of government, including being the chief of staff to Senator Chris Coons up until 2019. Adam has been active on Capitol Hill for 4 decades now. And we at A4LI are extremely excited to have him on our team and, helping us with this cause. Adam, before I basically read your whole bio here, I want to throw it to you. Can you give the audience, a bit more of an in-depth overview of your political background and then how you yourself became aware of and interested in longevity and the whole community here?
Sure, Dylan. Happy to, and thank all of you for taking time out of your busy day. Thank you very, very much for this important topic, and thank you, Dylan and Allison, for the honor. Greatly, greatly appreciated. It is I spent 25 years or so at Capitol Hill, and happy to have Dylan and longevity as a cause. It's what we call in the now world of K Street, or lobbying, a white hat client. It is a reason for me to get out of bed every morning, and I'm very, very appreciative of this opportunity. Dylan wanted me to explain my background, so I hope you can indulge me. My wife rolls her eyes when I give my background, but that's because she knows it of 25 years or so. I spent 25 years on Capitol Hill, originally hired by actually now Republican leader Mitch McConnell as counsel to the Senate Ethics Committee, doing investigations and guiding senators on ethics rules and responsibilities, and investigating Senator Bob Packwood who was then chair of the finance committee for sexual harassment. That was way back in 1995. I'll spare you all the details, but a few years later, Senator Daschle, the Democratic leader, asked me to become institutional counsel to the Senate, counsel to the Secretary of the Senate, dealing with institutional issues from everything from what happens if the Capitol blows up, how to continue government, to all the how the Senate runs as a business. Believe it or not, it's $1 billion internal enterprise. So for you to run the United States Senate costs about $1 billion just in and of itself to run. It's kind of a frightening figure as it is, but we can happy to get in the weeds and talk about that at some point over adult beverages or non-adult beverages, whatever your cup of tea is, so to speak. After working for both leaders back and forth, Senator Coons, Chris Coons of Delaware, who I've known for over 35 years, he was in my wedding, and I've known him since the ripe old age of 17, asked me to become his general counsel and chief of staff to go through a few things in his office, fix a few things, set his priorities, and set him on a glide path, as he would say. And I did that for 3+ years. And as Dylan said, with over 40+ years of kind of experience, you can see some great errors there. I took very open about this. Once you've worked for the Senate for over 20 years and have at least 50 years old, you can retire with a pension, which is what most people did. And that's the route I took to work downtown in the private sector and found Dylan. And it's been an honor to be my interests and Dylan's interests match up. As to how I'm connected to longevity, everybody has a personal story. Everybody I talk to has a personal story. Mine has relatives being disabled or sick or passed away with, as Dylan and I have talked about, age-related diseases from Alzheimer's to ALS to strokes to Parkinson's to everything. That on one hand, and then dealing with, the Senate came in a few years ago and talked about long-term healthcare insurance. When I worked for the Senate, I didn't know what it was. And all my mentors said, you got to get it. You got to get it now while it's cheap and you're young because of X, Y, and Z. And that's really, through financial reasons, personal reasons, through long-term care being in Obamacare and then taken out, which was a cause of my wife's mentor, Senator Ted Kennedy, to working with pharmaceutical companies, because I was chief of staff to a senator from Delaware, and Delaware is a pharmaceutical hub. All those references drew me to longevity as an interest. And finally, as I was leaving Senator Coons' office, he gave me kind of two pet projects to do. One is ethics reform, which has been debated about for the last year. And I gave him 55 ideas for how to improve the ethics process, which he said were a lot, too many. And then the other one was we both had elder care issues, personal and professional elder care issues. He said, that's a great subject. Solve the problem for me in 3 pages or less. I want a memo, 3 pages or less. And I came back to him and said it was virtually impossible in 3 pages or less, but explored the issue and we had a great conversation about it. And that's how I kind of became connected to the community and elder care, and also had a few clients in this, what we call it, this space of interest. And with that, as my wife would say, stop monologuing. I will turn it back to Dylan and Livingston, and Dylan and Allison. And thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for the little intro there, Adam. That's, as all of you can see, Adam has political experience up the wazoo. And, I really can't think of anybody better to help us move this mission forward. So thank you for joining us. Now, Adam, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I think your insight will be informative to people in this audience, some of whom are very non-political, and almost everybody here is science focused. So I think your perspective and, your experience and your thoughts will be illuminating. So first question is, can you give us some examples from your time on the Hill on how political action has helped advance other revolutionary technology industries. The first one that comes to my mind is nanotechnology, but I'm sure there are others that I could think of. And then can you kind of maybe shed some light on what the longevity industry can learn from these historical examples that you have dealt with firsthand?
Thanks, Dylan. That's actually a great question. If I can back up a step, because your question instantly like that reminded me of an anecdote or a story I like to tell that actually was during my tenure with Senator Coontz, which was we had a Fortune 10 CEO. I won't say which one, but it was a Fortune 10 CEO visit Senator Coontz, and I was with him. And we were in it was like right out of a movie of sorts. We were in his basement Capitol hideaway with it was the smoke filled room, but without the smoke. But we were having adult beverages. And for 2 hours, we had this conversation. He said, hey, Senator, and Adam, I have to tell you, this is the greatest time I've had in Washington so far. It's just you and your buddy, and we're just sitting around talking, and I'm avoiding all these Washington people who want me. I have no idea what these people do. I have no idea what these government affairs lobbyist people do. Can you just help me out and explain what the hell do these people do? Excuse my language, but this is basically the crux of the story. And for 2 hours, we had this discussion. So to back up a step, what do we do? We're here to protect, advance, and inform. So as noted, we're here to spot opportunities for a specific issue for longevity to insert itself in the process, to advance and further itself, its cause, its business interest in the legislative process. What opportunities are there? We're kind of issue spotting for opportunities to be in the discussion and get in the discussion. The other one is we're there to protect your business, protect a business interest, or protect a brand, or protect an issue from threats. So we're kind of on guard, like a watchdog, or as explaining in the business context, like everybody hates to pay homeowners insurance or car insurance. It's what my wife would say, void dollars, like dry cleaning. Nobody likes paying for dry cleaning, but you have to pay for dry cleaning. The void dollars. So it's like a void dollar. But when you need somebody who's informed about the way Washington works, somebody who can protect your interests, you want your lobbyist or your government relations professional there to protect your interests. And the next one is to inform, to advance, to inform, to protect, to inform and increase your profile. How do you advance or increase your profile is a key aspect of what the Longevity Caucus or longevity is interested in. And it all boils down to a message. I'll give away the secret sauce to a government relations or lobbying, like the secret ingredient or the secret formula. It all boils down to jobs and economics. So you lead with jobs and economics. How does that work? I once represented a company that makes PPE, personal protective equipment. So frankly, is you have a public good argument that we'll get to, but also how many jobs are there in your neighborhood, in your district, in your state? How does the community benefit? I had a CBD company that I used to represent, and basically the hemp industry is one of the largest growing industries in the United States statewide. So but they were interested in FDA regulation, or FDA easing its not easing its, but promulgating regulations. It's one of the largest growing industries. Give us clarity. All we want is clarity, which is what some industries want, so that they can establish a legitimate business interest. Give us clarity. And it's one of the largest growing. So that attracted, my client attracted a lot of meetings and a lot of support because of the business interest back home. So we have jobs and economics, and then you have the aligning with the public good. So you have an argument, crafting that argument along the interests of what is the public good. Now, longevity has an easy, healthy aging. living a long time in good health. That's easy. CBD, also an easy one. I represented an air ambulance company, and that's also, though very expensive and costly, when you're in the middle of the road and you've been in a car accident, you need air ambulance support. Obviously, there's a public good component. So that, and then aligning a third layer is aligning with the members' priorities. You could whisper in, uh, uh, you know, I work for Senator Coons and obviously know his staff and know him. And you could whisper in his ear, but it has to align with his priorities or any member's priorities. What committees are there? Where are they on? What do they support? What are they interested in? What are they, so, what are their past statements like? So finding that sweet spot with a member or helping him or her create that sweet spot is part of a job. And then I believe Dylan, you were lucky and were really good. Don't let Dylan talk to you because he'll talk you into anything, which is terrific. But you were terrific at hosting the previous webinar with Speaker Gingrich and Congressman Israel, and their theme is consistent with what I just enunciated. Thank goodness, knock on wood, because it's always good to be consistent with Speaker Gingrich and Congressman Israel. Although I kind of disagree with Speaker Gingrich on a few policy points, but getting back to our crux is longevity. They noted is a fiscal and moral obligation. So a fiscal obligation for the government and a moral obligation, and that dovetails with what we were talking. There are fiscal and human advantages to healthy aging. They also noted, and it's key to any government relations effort, that any lobby or government relations effort be easy to understand and targeted. Now, part of what I do is take a lot of techno gobbly speak and make it easy to understand for politicians. What do you want to do? Here's the problem. Here's the solution. Or here's the problem. Here are recommendations. Or here's the problem. And make it in plain English, simple to understand. They're very, very, very bright people, but they're very, very busy people too. So it helps with a busy staff. And we could go into the weeds of what a congressional meeting would look like. But and I think I've talked about it with you, some of you that are on this call. But that's a key also, which is boiling it down to simple, easy to understand problems, not just for the senator or congressperson, but for the audience as well, for people to easily understand it. And I hope, Dylan, that gives you an idea of how government relations in general and how the Longevity Caucus or Longevity Initiative should go about its approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. So that kind of just, so the next question that pops up into my head here, kind of related, kind of not related to that, but the next question that pops up here in my head is, what are like the odds of actually getting something done in regards to longevity in Washington right now? Can you give the audience kind of like your reading on the current situation in Washington? Is the political divide sharper or less sharp than it was in recent memory? And then I guess a more specific question I have for you is like, how do you think longevity as a topic would fare in the halls of Congress today versus 10 years ago versus, we can't predict the future, but 10 years from now? Like, how do you see the progression of the conversation moving forward, naturally?
Let me, thanks, Dylan, for that question. If I can invert it a little bit,
Sure.
that the thing to take away is that longevity is a topic of interest to Republicans and Democrats, a continual topic. They have disagreements on how to approach it, but the overall theme is of continual interest to both parties. I'll back up to say you started with kind of what's going on now in Washington. How would longevity play? Frankly, what's happening today is on the floor of the Senate is a discussion about voting rights, filibuster, and happy to talk about that at your leisure. It's not necessarily related to this topic, but we could certainly talk about it. And then after that there's a government funding debate. Government funding runs out February 18th. There may be in addition to how to fund the government for the next year, a supplemental on what's called a supplemental or additional funding to address COVID. That's being talked about now. And then you have Biden's signature Build Back Better, which is going to be the scaled down version of Build Back Better. That may go through. Then you have there's a China bill that's called in Washington SICA, the United States Innovation and Competitiveness Act, which is all about bringing industry back home, specifically semiconductors and how to compete with China. You have nominations, the Ukraine, Afghanistan, Democrats want to legislate on guns and immigration, also civil rights and police reform is also on some progressives' agenda. So you'll see all of that. So where does longevity play, and where are there cross-party interests? There are some things that cross party lines, namely in foreign policy, is the biggest overlap regarding Ukraine and the China aspect of it. It is an election year, so as we get closer to November, there will be election fever, or what we call in Washington the silly season, will escalate. So you'll see increasing volume of discord, not decreasing. Also, frankly, Congress is only around about half the year. So we're in the sweet spot of Congress now where they're here all the time. And then as we go toward November, they disappear. Like August, they'll be gone. They'll be gone for a while in October. But they'll be here most of the most part of the year. Whereas longevity fits in as a cause to rally around both sides. For instance, there are Republicans that are extremely interested in longevity. What stops them is kind of the Obamacare debate and any kind of support for Obamacare. What also stops Republicans is how to pay for it. And it also stops Democrats on how to pay for it. If some of you may remember that the Class Act or long-term care was in Obamacare originally, which is about it was public long-term healthcare insurance, but it was deemed too expensive and was taken out of Obamacare. There definitely is interest in the components of longevity, our pharmaceutical research, technology, nanotechnology, other sorts of technology. It's just where people get around is how to pay for it. We're in Washington speak. What are the pay fors? But there's definite interest in going about it. This is buttressed or reinforced by a poll that Dylan's going to talk about a little bit later, about that healthcare matters and matters to all, and Congress people notice that healthcare matters. Dylan, I hope I kind of answered your question with a minimal of Washington speak.
You gave a little bit of a preview for question 4 there. So
just a little preview. Yeah.
A little preview. Great. Well, I'll go back to question 3 then, that I had for you. That was great. And, I want to talk about, a little bit what our goal is in the next year, which is creating this longevity caucus. We at A4LI see developing this caucus as kind of like a foundational step for future reform. Can you kind of share, the steps on how A4LI and, the rest of this community can make that happen, make a caucus happen? And then I'm also sure that the audience is interested to kind of get your sense on why a caucus is actually useful and important. And then also, what are like the formal steps to creating a caucus? Like, can you touch on all of those different points there?
Sure. I noted earlier that everything boils down to jobs, economics, message, and arguments. Mm-hmm. It also boils down to personal relationships. All of you on this call matter. All of you matter to this effort. We need to leverage all of that, everything I just mentioned, including personal relationships, which are really the most important, to create the caucus. We would focus on the key players in the House and Senate that align with the personal and professional interests of the members of this endeavor, and of their using their committee assignments, for example, as kind of an indicator or as a directional. A caucus is just a bunch of members of Congress interested in one cause, in one cause. Now they can, under that umbrella, they can differ on how to get there, but it matters that they agree on it raises the profile of the cause. There are hundreds of caucuses or caucus. I don't know what the plural is. Excuse me, Dylan. I'll just use caucuses because it sounds better. However, many of them are kind of dormant, and members get asked all the time to be on caucuses. But uh, they really have to pick and choose what matters to them. And longevity, the issue of if it's messaged correctly, which is healthy, as the speaker and Congressman Israel noted, healthy aging, uh, um, making things affordable, easy to understand, and available. And that is something that everybody's interested in. Now, how to get a caucus formally approved? There are different ways, as is everything. The House and the Senate are completely different. It might as well be like France and Spain. They're under the same building, but completely operate differently. Caucus, you have to getting into the weeds. A caucus, you need to register a caucus. Have a member of the Congress register a caucus at the Committee on House Administration, and that gets you some an internal leg up regarding some office space and use of internal mail, and gives you a little official imprimatur on it. You may need a nexus of a few members for House Administration to notice. Regarding the Senate, it goes through the Senate Rules Committee, and it may need a Senate resolution, but there are official caucuses. Most of them are unofficial, and the Senate takes kind of a completely different view about caucuses. Most of them are kind of informal, and it's really up to the member to kind of organize, but it's really an outside effort working for the member. But it really serves as an umbrella for a cause to increase its profile and work with the member on specific issues. Now, regarding specific issues working with the member, you got to be careful to not alienate people that have just joined your caucus. So you kind of have to, once you establish a caucus, knock on wood, we'll get there. You just have to be careful about what you do and remember the overall theme of the caucus here, which is healthy aging. So I kind of hope I answered your question there.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, that's kind of A for Allies and Adams. It's our kind of main focus for this next year for 2022. So, everybody on this Foresight call should be, at least aware of, but hopefully engaged with their policymakers, because like Adam said, it's going to take everybody, right? So the last question I have here, before we get to the Q&A and I kind of open it up to the audience, Adam, you touched on it before, but A for Ally just conducted a poll where we partnered with Public Policy Polling to ask baseline questions to the voting public about longevity, and specifically about the desirability of longevity and aging therapeutics. A for Ally is planning on making these results public, hopefully by the end of this week. So obviously none of you have seen this yet. However, Adam, as our lobbyist, has. So Adam, can you highlight a few of the questions and responses that you particularly found interesting or exciting? And then can you name the questions and answers that you think A for Ally can use to effectively lobby the government for the longevity caucus or whatever it may be?
Sure. And again, I really appreciate the question. The poll is just fascinating, especially what's called the cross tabulations, or just not the conclusions of the poll, but the who's answering, what demographic does each respondent fit? Not surprisingly, it shows that everybody's interested in aging. We're healthy aging. Believe it or not, some people weren't, which I find weird. It must be I would predict to be the younger set who's like, I'm too busy. I just can't focus on it or something like that, but they'll eventually get there. Um, so that, most people, believe in not just aging for a long time, but aging for a long time in good health, and make that connection. Um, and that is tied together with, I believe 57% know of someone with a quote unquote old age condition, Parkinson's, Parkinson's, ALS, Alzheimer's, dementia, etc. Not to mention that overwhelming majority favor medical research. So tying that together, there is public support for this endeavor. I also found it fascinating, and that 68%, I just wrote this down in my little scribbles, said they would say take drugs if they were safe, affordable, effective, and available. Uh, uh, which that hits all the right buttons. Um, and 68%, so it's an overwhelming majority. Believe it or not, 12% said no. Um, and of that dynamic, 15% were Trump voters, 11% Biden voters. So it wasn't just, you would suspect that the no would be all Trump voters, but it broke down with Biden voters also, which correlates that some of the anti-vax movements or some of the anti-technology cuts across both sides, which I found surprising. Um, for the longevity caucus, healthcare, this is what Democrats tout. Healthcare continues to poll at the top of items of interest. It's number one for Democrats. It's number three for Republicans after national security and debt. But this is a key factor in government relations or lobbying efforts about that Republicans believe it matters, but are also concerned about affordability and cost and about federal spending. So it can't just be if you want to make this a bipartisan caucus, it can't be a runaway train of federal spending. It has to be showing that federal spending matters, but here's what you get. ROI, I think is, as Dylan would say, return on investment. It's not just federal spending, it's an investment. And here's the return on investment. And to show it that way. So I go back to where I started, which is message is really important, as is shown by Republican responses about the issue is important to me, but so is affordability in how much the federal government says. And that the key takeaway from looking at the cross tabulations is, frankly, the obvious fact that everybody gets old, but across all demographics, healthy aging matters. And they're all interested in this topic. And that I would go back to messaging that rather than spending, investing is the tried and true word for how to characterize federal research and federal research and federal development in this area. It's an investment for ourselves. So again, thank you very, very much. And I know the poll is going to be released, and I've greatly appreciated it. I look forward to all your responses and all your observations on this poll as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the good part about the what you talked about the crosstabs, and how the right kind of is interested in national security and reducing the debt, and on the left it was improving health of citizens, reducing poverty, and affecting the helping preserve the environment. And the good news is that the latest iteration of the Andrew Scott longevity dividend argument touches on every one of those, both on the right and the left. So it's great. Our ability to message, I think, is going to be is not going to be as difficult as it might seem, because the crosstabs are very encouraging. So that's all great. Adam, thank you so much for your time here, answering my questions and, checking some boxes off for me. Now I kind of want to, open the door and kind of let, the audience get their thoughts and questions out to you. So, Allison, I haven't really been keeping track of the chat here at all.
I have
I'm gonna let you, I'm gonna let you, do the order of the questions here. But yeah, that works.
think, yeah. This was very informative. Thanks a ton, Adam. This was really great. Okay, we have lots of questions queued up already and a few uploaded. So Tom Khalil, yours got uploaded to pole position. You're first.
Great. Thanks, Allison. And Dylan and Adam, thanks so much for your presentation. This is less of a comment than, I guess, a point of view, which is, I think, a near-term opportunity is to address one of the issues that Congress has inadvertently created, which is that virtually all of the increase to the National Institute on Aging has been earmarked for Alzheimer's. So the National Institute on Aging can fund roughly 28% of the proposals that they get in Alzheimer's, but 10% or less of the proposals that in all other areas of aging. So Congress has inadvertently made it more difficult for the National Institute on Aging, which would be one of the logical parts of the NIH to lead such an initiative to move forward in this area. So I think that there are 4 potential targets for a push on appropriations, and a number of philanthropists have retained Eric Fatemi is the who was on Senate Labor HHS Appropriations Committee for 12 years, including as staff director, and is the only non-NIH employee to ever get the NIH Director's Award. So he's got a close relationship, particularly on the Senate side. But I think there are 4 potential opportunities. One is an increase in the NIA top line that is not earmarked for Alzheimer's, but would allow them to support both basic and translational aging biology and geroscience, number 1. Number 2, as you probably know, NIH has something called the Common Fund, which is specifically to support trans NIH cross-cutting NIH initiatives. And that has already funded a major network in the field of senescent cells, which is one of the really promising approaches in geroscience. Number 3, if the Congress decides to support President Biden's proposal for an ARPA-H, which is designed to support high-risk, high-return research, ARPA-H could play a role. And 4, FDA has a funding mechanism called regulatory science. They've created centers of excellence, University of Maryland, UCSF and Stanford, and Mayo and Yale are their first 3 centers that are designed them to help identify those areas where the FDA currently does not have the science in order to make the regulatory decisions that they need to make. So one example of that is, are there biomarkers? Can the FDA work with the university research community and industry to discover and validate biomarkers that they could rely on as surrogate endpoints? Because it's going to be very difficult for industry to sign up to a 30-year clinical trial. The cost of that would be prohibitive. So one of the things that would unlock a huge amount of private sector investment is the ability to have surrogate endpoints that could be relied on, or just novel regulatory pathways like the TAME trial, which is relying on something called a composite endpoint, which is delaying the onset of a basket of chronic diseases associated with aging. So those are 4 opportunities that I see to use the appropriations process as a way of making advances. And the good news is we have someone who has 12 years of experience on the relevant approach subcommittee who's beginning to work on it, and I'm sure would be very interested in collaborating with you, Adam, and your team.
Thanks, Tom. That's amazing that you mentioned Eric's name. Just amazing. We share the same mentor, I believe. Ellen Murray worked at, is still at appropriations, has worked at appropriations for like 40 years. pretty much wrote Obamacare. We worked together while I was chief of staff to Senator Coons, and Senator Coons is on appropriations. And I think he learned everything from Ellen. He's just downtown. He's at a firm called Cornerstone. Another former chief of staff to Senator Coons works at Cornerstone. Happy to work with them or brainstorm any potential ideas about approps. Head of appropriations, Kiefer, obviously know pretty well, the chief staff director. So happy to talk all it over with Eric. For those of you who were talking kind of in the weeds, Washington, yellow pages, bingo. This is all who is the top Democratic staffer and who's the subject matter expert on the Senate Appropriations Committee, who handles specific funding for NIH, and NIH would receive an accounting or an allocation. Actually, the committee and then the subcommittee receives an allocation, and then how much money does that specific subcommittee get, and how much money do they allocate toward NIH, and then it goes down into the weeds level, and all what they call those clerks. They're not clerks; they're really professional staffers. Kind of a bad name for them. Kind of are kind of the gurus, for lack of a better term, in charge of NIH and all those government agencies that are under their watch. So excuse the Washington bingo, but Tom, just happy to talk to him because you're kind of talking my wheelhouse, which is in addition to a few other things, but appropriations.
But yeah, the key point is that it wasn't a conscious decision by the Congress. Congress didn't set out to make it more difficult for the NIA to launch something in this area. It was an inadvertent second order consequence of their decision to earmark all of the increase of the NIA to Alzheimer's. So because they said, we're going to give you more money, but we're going to earmark 98, 99%, something like that, to Alzheimer's, that has made it more difficult for the NIA to respond to all of the interesting research ideas that having to do with epigenetic reprogramming and cellular senescence and all these other ideas.
So again, happy to work with them. Happy to entertain a call from them. It's a fascinating project, and they're gonna, obviously the appropriations gets a specific, each clerk or each subcommittee or each agency gets a specific dollar amount in their wallet, just like your have your own wallet for spending, and you have to allocate money in each different place. So the money would have to come from, to make up for it, the money would have to come from somewhere. So you have to kind of game plan out that about where that money comes from to rectify the inadvertent error. And that strategy, both tactical and strategic, is something that we're happy to work on or work.
All right, lovely. I have two hands up, which means that those are comments directly relevant to this point. And we have Nir and then Carl with 2 points.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Dylan, for everything you're doing. And Adam, thanks so much for educating us. The eureka moment for me in this discussion with Gingrich and Israel was when I challenged the fact that they said that science is bipartisan. And I said, I haven't noticed that recently. And Gingrich very passionately said, no, what the people were rejected is the government telling them to take something, okay? So it shouldn't be that way. And I just wanted you to, I second that, or tell me, it's very important to know that because science is leading this effort.
Yes, I realize that. And I live in it's been on CNN for the past 3 days. I live in Virginia, where Virginia just lifted mask mandates in schools. Under that, it's the parental decision. Everybody has choice. Nothing should be mandated, which I want to tear my hair out of sorts. But you're absolutely right that it's for whatever reason, Americans have a resistance to things that are seen as forced on them. Now, why vaccinations or science or other things are different from seatbelts or speed limits, or other things. I'm not sure, and it's a debate for another day. But I take your point. There is some natural resistance to science. I go back to Dylan's poll, the 12% of people, when they said it's going to be safe, it's going to be available and affordable, said no. Why? It's just boggles the mind. So I take your point, and I completely I agree with you. It is a struggle, and it will be a struggle with certain aspects of the Republican Party. Fortunately, most aspects of the Republican Party are demonstrably pro science in this area where the Longevity Caucus would focus, which is about healthy aging rather than the COVID wars, so to speak. It's in a different area code. So we're in a much better playing field to go further with the metaphor than with the battle of COVID.
Okay, lovely. We
An
have
uncomfortable answer, but I'm trying to answer your question honestly, because I am where you are ideologically, but this needs to be a bipartisan effort.
lovely. Thank you. And we have Carl with a direct comment to this, and then we move back to the question.
What Tom said about the NIA could be fixed if the NIA wasn't trying to do, if there was an actual institute dedicated to Alzheimer's. Like, what is the feasibility of splitting the NIA in two? So there's a National Institute of Alzheimer's Disease, analogous to the cancer one, and one for all their chronic diseases of aging, and separately a National Institute of Biology.
It's a great question. It's a great question, whether you just have split all the money off into a specific Alzheimer's Institute, National Alzheimer's Institute, or keep it under NIH. I would think that there'll be a lot of institutional resistance to that. But it's something it's certainly worth exploring. But I would imagine that there would be a lot of institutional resistance. It would be maybe much easier to increase funding or figure out the budgetary aspects of it rather than split off NIH.
Where's the resistance? Well, where do you anticipate resist idea coming from?
I think there would be, like with anything, there'd be bureaucratic resistance from the NIH itself into splitting it off, because there may be, and that's why it's an interesting idea. Because if you're saying all the money goes to, most of the money goes to NIH, what goes for Alzheimer's Institute, then that's a reason in of itself to have an institute. But there may be other strings, other entanglements into other research areas, other bureaucracies in the NIH that they may want to hang on to. So when dealing with the Washington bureaucracy, it's hard to alter the Washington bureaucracy. It's just it's a Sisyphus project, unfortunately, with Washington. But it's worth engaging. It really is worth engaging.
Oh, well. Okay, great. And
I'm not diminishing it. I'm just saying that it's when trying to do good things and fighting you're not just trying to do the good thing, but you're just fighting against the tide.
So I'll just say that from a Congress's point of view, it would seem like they get more control, because they can then out, they can direct wording to one or the other differential as much chance of it going to the wrong one.
It's certainly worth talking to HHS about. It really is.
okay, good. Food for thought here. And next one up, we have Adam.
Hi. So I had a small follow-up to what Carl mentioned. So I'll just go that first and then lead into the other question, the main question, which is that, I also noticed near Barzilai writing that, people don't get Alzheimer's until in their first 7 decades of life. So I find that it's quite strange to think about Alzheimer's as something separate, in the sense that really Alzheimer's is aging. Aging is Alzheimer's. And so there's no difference. And that leads me to the first question, the first part of my question, which is, how many elected representatives actually understand the distinction of the current medical research system of focusing on the diseases of aging first versus the geroscience approach which is just completely different. So you can't even have a National Institute of Alzheimer's. That seems to me like a meaningless contract, because Alzheimer's is aging. Aging is Alzheimer's. What we're saying, I think, in the longevity space is let's solve the fundamental problems instead of trying to fix the house when it's all rotten and falling apart. And it's way too late, which is where we're spending all the money.
Adam, no one goes to Congress and says, I'm getting older. Right?
For sure. So,
so there's an education problem, which is, the members of Congress are not reading the geroscience literature.
Yes.
They're dealing with patient groups who come to them and says, my wife has Alzheimer's. It's terrible. You have to do something about that.
I love that comment. Let me just lead in with that just to the second part of the question, because I think, Tom, I really thank you for that, because it's a perfect segue, which is the second part of the question. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Disease lobby groups, they reach out to representatives, they pay money, et cetera, where a lot of what I think people in the longevity community are thinking, well, maybe a crypto billionaire wants to put $1 billion towards lobbying. How does that compare with what money is being used today and what kind of outreach is done today by other groups, the pharma lobbies, the disease specific lobbies, et cetera? What amounts of money are we talking about? And how much money would make what kind of difference? So if crypto billionaire X says, I am now earmarking 10 million a year to the geroscience agenda, how would we spend that money and what kind of plausibility for results could we get? If we spend $100 million a year for 5 years, 8 years, what kind of outcome could we get? It would really help to get some plausibility of what the outcomes might be. So basically, first question, to what degree are representatives aware of the distinction between disease and geroscience, a disease-focused approach versus geroscience? And the second part of it is, how could money help? How much money would help? To what degree? How do we think about that? And how much money is being spent by the counter movement today?
Let me see if I can answer that, which is that both of you are absolutely right. As Chief of Staff to Senator Coons, I had a lot of people cross my door in terrible shape, with awful stories about themselves or their relatives or their family members or one of their friends, asking for research dollars or asking for help. And it was specific asks for specific diseases or specific conditions. And nobody really came under the rubric of this is a general healthy aging is a problem that affects everybody. We need under the rubric of a general ask about healthy aging, which is the point of Dylan's endeavor, Longevity Caucus. Even some interest groups had their own pet issues and were lobbying or coming to me on specific issues, and come to the Hill on specific issues. They come to the Appropriations Committee because they want a specific thing or line item, or now an earmark in some cases, for appropriations, or they come to the Health Committee, the Health, Education, Labor, Pension Committee for help in one specific issue area. But the overall rubric and how it fit each individual condition fits into an overall scheme, that really, nobody approaches that holistic approach. Now, to get to the second part, which is the money part, there is a lot of pharma money, a lot of it. There's a lot of money for each of the conditions. There is, we have a great angel white hat cause, as I kind of Dylan and I began the presentation, but we're the little engine that could, with a great message of tying it all together in one, in the macro, a specific, we're the overall, not the macro. And with the great message with sympathetic members, we can create both a caucus and a cause and a message that'll have this, incur the sympathetic ear of members of Congress. I don't know if I specifically answered your question.
Well, I'll try to hone in. So
But I'm trying to answer your question.
no, I appreciate
Not be a Washington weasel. So
no problem. I'll try to hone in. If you had to put a number on it, how much money today do you think is going to lobbying for the disease approach from both pharma and disease specific lobbies? If you had to guess a number, are we talking $100 million a year, 5 million, a billion? What are we talking about?
well, farmer spends millions, million, at least 10 million, probably a lot more. So I haven't looked at their specific lobbying reports. Dylan's putting his thumb up higher, and he's absolutely right. I'm just being conservative because I don't want to, I don't want to, what is it, false facts or
No problem. So then I'll
I'm just trying to be accurate, not,
that's super helpful. And then I'll just ask the second part, which is, let's say we had 50 million a year.
Jesus
What
Christ.
results do you think we could get?
with 50 million a year, but you could, aside from being on a beach in Brazil doing this job, Dylan would have a great, Dylan would have a great staff. It would be a more robust staff with,
Adam,
you flesh out the organization.
Adam,
Yeah.
you could do something really significant for in the millions of dollars.
You could,
year.
there's no doubt that you could do something significant with millions. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I was going with the micro of staffing, newsletters, doing what every other lobbying organization does on a regular basis, but amping it up to the nth degree for a targeted message that ties it all together. You're absolutely right. A lot.
Okay. We have two people here in the queue. Maybe Kevin and Krian, you can just make your points back to back, and we'll see whether we have time to get them.
I'll be real quick. There's a program the NIH has called All of Us. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically, the problem is, how do we get people to start asking for these things? We have disease groups, people with suffering, acute care. They're part of the lobby group. How do we get healthy people who aren't afraid of falling apart on time to start asking for more money so that they can stay healthy? And the All of Us program is a vehicle that you should really be looking at, because it will get aging biomarkers studied, and there's already money there, but it's kind of this moribund thing that's not actually being implemented. So it could be a vehicle. Not really a question, more of a suggestion. Education is really the key of the public, and there should be outreach from the government. It shouldn't all be waiting for people to come and, get stuff. We want to also create the demand based on the education that we understand. So we got to communicate what we know better.
You're absolutely right. And this affects everybody. And I'll go back to Dylan's poll, which is not Dylan's poll, but was the Public Policy Research Center. Which is the overwhelming majority support medical research, support investment, and the overwhelming majority have a family member or somebody they know who suffers from an age-related condition.
So reaching the healthy people, the caregivers and people like that who are affected, that's really, I think, the easiest way. We got to look for the easiest ways to start creating the conversation. That's
correct. That's the easiest way.
Okay, I'm sorry. I am going to have to go in like 5 or 10 minutes, but I need to ask this question, Adam, because I need to state a point and ask you, do you agree? If not, why not? And if you do agree, what can we do? Look, what we have in our general health is a terrible situation. We have rampant metabolic syndrome and all the things that come from it. Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and even Alzheimer, which is now known as type 3 diabetes in the community that studies the molecular basis of it, at least some of them. Now, what we have is a problem that cannot be solved by the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, which are arguably somewhat captured agencies. But even if they weren't, the problem is too big for them to solve, because it ties in my opinion and the opinion of others, to our agriculture system and the farm bills and all this stuff. If we don't stop subsidizing corn and corn syrup and monocrops if we don't get these agencies to reverse their 50-year disaster of promoting a low-fat, high-carb diet, which has made metabolic syndrome into the train wreck that is destroying our health system and that has caused all the COVID comorbidities that killed 90+% of the people with COVID, we're not going to move the needle on this. You can fool around with drugs and committees all you want, but if we don't get people, if we don't flatten the curve that is their bellies, they're just going to continue to get sick, drop out of the workforce, cost money, and die. Do you agree that this is a broader problem than just an NIH problem, that it goes into the USDA and the agriculture lobbies and such like that, and not just big pharma, but big food? Do you agree? If not, why not? And if you do agree, how do we how do we like coordinate this thing, which is broader than NIH and associated agencies?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do agree. I do agree that it's a systemic problem of our country, from everything from Doritos to now I can't think of Ho-Hos, Twinkies, everything else. And I'm taking your question seriously because that's what's available to fast food, because that's what's available. Thankfully, I hope you believe me, it's not in my refrigerator, although, and it's a problem because
that's what we subsidize federally.
we do. And, there are all sorts of subsidies for everything from the dairy industry, the meat industry, there were all these subsidies and all those interest groups. And when I worked for Senator Coons, I was on the forefront of the GMO debate, with GMO interest groups coming in pro and con about GMOs and the money on both sides of the issue. You're absolutely correct that there's a lot of money involved and a lot of interest involved in every whether it's high fructose corn syrup or anything else. So here's what I could say, which is that may not answer your question satisfactorily, but that we have to envision ourselves as I said before, as the little engine that could. That this effort for a longevity caucus for healthy aging is to get a group of members of Congress who are interested in healthy aging to form a caucus and to discuss, promote, and increase the profile of healthy aging. Now, with that discussion, it may lead to other things, such as those issue areas that you brought up, that you brought up in a healthy discussion of whether to continue underwriting or continue helping those industries or not, or disclosure of labeling or other things. But you're absolutely right that it's a monstrous effort that's a systemic problem, and that we're certainly the David in the middle of a bunch of Goliaths, but fortunately we're a really, really good David with a really, really good message.
Well, thank you for that response, and I hope we can work together in the future, because I'd love to talk more with you about this.
Same here. Thank you for your observation. You, as Senator Coons said, you had me at hello, although I do like steak, so I apologize for that.
All right, let's see if the other questions are still relevant. We had David with his hand up, probably rightly relevant for this one here. David.
Thank you, Allison, Adam, and Dylan. Appreciate it. The bipartisanship is a good thing. Senator Paul and Booker have introduced legislation that would allow the FDA to not require animal testing for all drug testing. Currently, it is actually a requirement, even if not useful. So they have both tendered that legislation in the Senate. I'm wondering if you have any knowledge about, has it gotten additional co-sponsors and signers? Is it kind of floating out there in the realm of the antechamber of history? How's it going? And what do you think could be done to improve its chances?
I'd have to frankly look up the specifics of that bill and where it is regarding the in the committee. So happy to get back to you on that. Happy to get back to you on that. I think that if there is a, there, from what I remember and what I know, there's a the cosmetic industry and some other industries, maybe some are sympathetic, some are not to that bill. So I think there is some resistance, but I've forgotten where. I am familiar with it, but I don't know where it is in the process at the moment. But that's a good example of bipartisanship because those two senators are so different.
Lovely. Okay, great analogy here. Then we have a final question here from Carl Fleger, and then we'll see. Thank you so much, Adam, for having been so generous with your time already.
So at your estimate of easy this will be the same as your answer to the splitting the NIA, but you mentioned the idea of show me where the money's going to come from or where money. We don't need more money. We need is money diverted from the siloed chronic disease institutes in the NIH to be the fundamental geroscience of biology of aging. There's plenty of total budget on at the NIH, but the problem is it's hard to take away from other things away, even when you're really not taking it away because you're giving it to the things that are going to solve those diseases. But fundamentally, what the field needs a larger fraction of that total NIH pool going to fundamental biology aging, not a new big budget in addition to putting all the money where it's going currently to the sort of bringing the dam after the leak is really bad approach.
I know I didn't hear what you said there, Carl, because you were coming in and out.
Yeah,
Sorry, this is a brand new webcam, and I'm told I'm getting echoes. Can you? Okay.
that's better. That was yeah.
So what is the political feasibility of shifting the money in the NIH around, not getting new money? You mentioned getting new money was a big problem, right? This isn't the new money problem. It's a problem that is going to this siloed approach, curing the diseases that are already full-blown clinical. What we need is the cancer money, the diabetes, the heart disease money, the Alzheimer's money going to fundamental biology, aging, geroscience approach. There's no new money. The money was great, but it's not required.
Let me answer that. The money, the NIH pot, has to come from somewhere, and all those specific allocations have to come from somewhere. So you're taking money from somewhere to put into NIH, or you're taking money from somewhere else to give to NIH. So either we're going to have to borrow money, more money, we're going to have to raise taxes, or we're going to have to figure it out how to pay for it from some other account. So you have all those interest groups trying to figure it out with you. We're in the sea of all those interest groups. So how does our voice or your voice rise above those others? So it's constant effort, message, lobbying, engagement, and of course funding.
No, it's not the opposite of what I just. No, that's not what I just said. It's not giving new money to the NIH. Keep NIH budget the same. No stealing from anywhere else. Steal from the individual siloed NIH institutes and give it to fundamental biology of aging, or to the extent to which fundamental biology of aging, geroscience approach type science is being funded in all the institutes, as lots of people who are in the the geroscience approach who work at the NIA have spearheaded. The problem is there's not enough going to the fundamental biology of aging. That's the shift that needs to happen. It's not new money to the NIH. It's shifting in the NIH, within the NIH budget, away from siloed cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, et cetera, toward fundamental biology of aging. that's the debate that needs to be happening.
And that I see your point. I see your point. I see where you're going. And I'm not just, which is, I understand it. But when you take money from siloed NIH funds from the cancer pot or the Alzheimer's pot and put it into a general pot, then that gets the cancer or Alzheimer's groups upset. And so you're kind of, even though it remains in NIH, you're still ticking off various interest groups. So it's feasible because it still goes to healthcare and healthy aging, but it's just hard because you're going to get some pushback or resistance from folks that are used to getting money in that individual silo. So I'm saying yes, but
Absolutely. It has to be done in such a way that you're not taking the money away from people, but you're instead causing them to shift the nature of their work so that they are still in control and still have the prestige, but are doing the work that we want them to do.
correct. I agree. Yes. And if I could take a point to very quickly get back to, I think it was, I may mispronounce this name and I apologize, Mr. Gobel, David Gobel, if he's still on, that
It's Goebel.
Gobel, I'm sorry.
No problem. Absolutely.
I apologize.
I should put in an accent mark after the O.
So thank you. That bill, the bill you referenced, is also sponsored by Mike Braun of Indiana, John Kennedy, Louisiana, Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico, Susan Collins of Maine is on it, and Marco Rubio of Florida is on it. It's been referred to the Health Committee. No action has been taken at this time, but it's under Health Committee consideration.
Does that mean it is now going to marinate for 20 years like a single malt scotch?
Although I like single malt scotch, I do not know if it's going to marinate or whether there's somebody in that committee that's going to try and push that bill. That's of a granular level. I don't know yet.
Is that something that's find outable? And
Yes, so we should be able to find out where in the priority is it. At the moment, they're wrapped around the axle of two axles around Build Back Better and what provisions are going to survive in Build Back Better, and the other one, which is the appropriations, which is the fiscal year appropriations, which will be decided hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
so in these circumstances, the best thing you can hope for is that the pilot light doesn't go out. And that
Well, I think it may be something of a bipartisan movement for after we're over the hurdles of voting rights and government funding. Something for the spring if help takes it up.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Adam. We've held you for 15 minutes longer. I know your time is incredibly valuable. But as you can tell, you have a ton of support in this group and lots of people that are just trickling down with more proposals for what one could do. So thank you so much for taking time. Dylan, I think this was a really long discussion. Thanks a lot for choosing our opportunity to do this. And perhaps you want to close it out. Just thank you from my end, and I already look forward to the next policy focus.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Allison, for having me again. I just want to touch on one thing that Adam said in the beginning. This group right here needs to become activated for this political cause. This is the core of the longevity community right here. So, please feel free to reach out to A4LI to, get involved with not only, I'm going to say, consider contributing, whatever, but get involved with, our events and our activities, and let's try to find ways to get your specific congressperson on board with what we're doing. So the final words I'll say here are thank you for coming, and please do not hesitate, anybody on this call, to reach out to me at dylan@a4li.org. If you have any other things you want to talk to Adam about, feel free to email me those too, and I can run them by him, and maybe we can get your answers, get your questions answered. So great job, everybody, and I'm excited for the next one in February.
Thank you very, very much, all of you. Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you.